You heard that right. Let's get ready to rumble. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night if you're about to sleep. Hi, my name is Phil and welcome to another segment of Freaky Filipino Friday with Phil. Rar. Where I talk about weird, freaky, at the same time interesting things about the Philippines. So I just saw Raya and the Last Dragon and it was just and yeah, you have to see it for yourselves, guys. And it's not just a typical Disney movie, okay? Where there's no love story or a prince saving a princess and no random singing. It's really an action-packed movie and it's really captivating. The hand-to-hand combat was just amazing. It was really well done. But today I'm not gonna talk about Raya and the Last Dragon, so maybe some other time, I think. One of the reasons why I love Raya and the Last Dragon is that they included a lot of Southeast Asian martial arts, and that includes Eskrima, aka stick fighting. Yeah, stick fighting. Quite intimidating, right? And we're gonna talk about that today, okay? And it was like the world was telling me to make a video about this. So I work in a book company, you know, where we sell books. Yeah, what else do we sell? While I was scanning the books, like, boop! Filipino martial arts. And then later at night, I was browsing in my YouTube and then I saw something again. So I stumbled upon an interesting video and that was karate. And it was believed that karate could have come from Eskrima. Wow.
But here's the crazy part. This exact same exercise is also practiced in Kali, a traditional martial art from the Philippines.
Yeah, you heard that right. But it's still a theory. If you want to see the video, I'm just gonna put the link below, okay? So let's begin. In the Philippines, there are different forms of martial arts. Among the most popular form of FMA or Filipino martial arts is the Eskrima, or known as Arnis and Kali. Kali, my god, I'm so westernized. I know it's confusing, but there are tons of names of these martial arts. And this depends on which area of the Philippines is. So Arnis comes from the Spanish word arnes, which means armor, and it is widely used in the Luzon areas. Eskrima came from the Spanish word esgrima, which means fencing, and common in the Visayan regions. You know, Spaniards, they had to name it because they wanted their own way, you know, colonizers. But the oldest name for this is Kali, and there are multiple reasons why it's called Kali. And if you're Indian, you would be very familiar with the name Kali, because Kali is a Hindu goddess, and she is known as the destroyer of evil forces, which is kind of a bit logical basing on the martial arts and how Kali kills demons. She is often presented carrying a sword with a bloodied head of a demon. The scenery is kind of a bit scary, but you know, she does this out of love, just like Asian mothers. I wouldn't be surprised because before Philippines was influenced by Christianity and Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism was common in the Philippines aside from paganism/animism. Another theory is that it derived from the word chakalele, which is a tribal stick fencing from Indonesia. But according to Dan Inosanto, that the word Kali is two separate words in Bisaya, where ka means kamot and li means lihok. But the most obvious one is the word kalis is found in many pre-Hispanic languages around the Philippines. And this was documented by Antonio Pigafetta, who came along with the expedition of Magellan, and who I also mentioned a lot in my previous videos. So I'll give you some examples. So the Banag language, they have this word kali. Kapampangan, Tagalog, Bilocano, they have karis. Hiligaynon, Cebuano, and yeah, they have also kalis. And also Moro, Maguindanao, in Mindanao, they have the word kalis or Chris. Not Chris like Chris Aquino, okay? Chris, the weapon. So kalis, kalis, karis, it's a weapon, okay? It's a sharp weapon in many languages in the Philippines. Before it was formally named as Kali, Eskrima, and also Arnis, different tribes around the Philippines had their own name for this practice. For example, the Ibanags, they call it Pakali-kali. In Pangasinan, it's Sitbatan or Kalirongan. For the Kampampangans, they call it Sinawali. Tagalog, it's Kalis or Pananandata. And for the Ilonggos, Pagaradman and Kalidraman for the Cebuanos. So within the video, I'll be using Eskrima, Arnis, or what was that again? Kaliya. So I might use one of them, okay? So this combat form has been perfected through centuries of practice. So it can be traced to native fighting techniques during pre-Hispanic Philippines Filipino tribes and neighboring Southeast Asian kingdoms. Like, yeah, there had been a lot of conflicts within the islands of the Philippines. You know, we're just conflict-driven people. Yeah, like the old saying goes, people who hate Filipinos are Filipinos themselves. Hashtag crab mentality. There had been different theories where it specifically came from. Some say it came from the kingdom of Sriwijaya in Java, Indonesia, because the Sriwijayans were known to be a warrior culture and said to be masters of blades. But when the Majapahit Empire overthrew the Sriwijaya, they fled to the islands of the Visayas, which is in the Philippines. And this is just a theory, okay? And that's why Visayas is called Visayas, because the people who settled in the Visayas were Sriwijayans. And Arnis can be influenced by a similar martial arts called Silat, which originated from Nusantara, which is an old name for maritime Southeast Asia or the Indonesian archipelago. So don't hate me for this, okay? These are just theories. Some of you are warriors, keyboard warriors. We can't also deny these statements because these were from the past. Like, who knows? And people interacted before in the past. You know, trading, invasions, and stuff like that. And there are different influences to Arnis in general. By the time the Spaniards arrived in the Philippines, they were like, these people, they ain't playing. They already observed this weapon-based practice among the natives. This was all documented by the first Spanish settlers in the expedition of Magellan. Some expeditions have encountered native tribesmen armed with sticks and knives. In 1521, the Spaniards experienced this violence firsthand. In the Battle of Mactan, Ferdinand Magellan was killed by the forces of Datu Lapu-Lapu, and the death of Magellan was documented by our friend Antonio Pigafetta. It states that our old friend Magellan here was stabbed in the face and then was hacked and stabbed to death by the warriors of Lapu-Lapu. Yeah, not a very warm welcome. And it wasn't the last time they experienced this kind of violence. They encountered more. Of course, the Spaniards were able to colonize the country, yeah, with their modern weapons, you know, guns and armors. Like, come on guys, let's play fair, okay? But the Spaniards, never took the natives so lightly because they were violent driven. This was even stated by Francisco de Sande in the book The Philippine Islands 1493 to 1898. He said, quote unquote, "The people of this country are not simple or foolish, nor are they frightened by anything whatever. They can be dealt only by arquebus, bang bang, or by gifts of gold or silver. They killed the Spaniards so boldly that without arquebuses, we could do nothing." This was the reason why Magallanes, the discoverer of these islands, was killed, and that of Villalobos and Saavedra, and those who came afterward from the Nueva España were maltreated. That's why you don't mess with Filipinos, especially the Visayans. Mauni isu kay may mosturya kay di may magpalupig og tigbasay. Because of the modern weapons, the Spaniards were able to take hold of the Philippine Islands. Yeah, for 300 plus years. But within those 300 plus years, there had been plenty of revolts from the natives, and the Spaniards noticed that the natives within the communities were still practicing these martial arts. Out of fear that the natives can use this against them, they burn all the written records about the martial arts, which by the way also burned all the old written records of our old writing system called Baybayin, and forbade all the natives to practice Eskrima. It was officially banned in 1764, and they would even question people bringing knives within the town. Like Francisco de Sande said, Filipinos are not simple or foolish. Instead of carrying knives and swords around town, the natives carried their sticks instead. They would use wood training sticks of rattan or bahi to practice their moves in order to avoid suspicion. But how do they practice their moves? Well, the Filipinos found a way to keep their tradition alive without being caught by the Spaniards. Instead of practicing openly in the eyes of the public, they hid the practice in another art form, performance art. The Spaniards noticed that they couldn't totally wipe out the cultural practices of the Filipinos, especially the cultural dance, so they just let them be. The Spaniards were like, okay, Filipinos, we're tired. We're tired of telling you what to do and what not to do, okay? So do your weird ass practices, okay? As long as you don't do your martial arts, yeah? Yes, ma'am, sir. But Filipinos took advantage of this. They disguised the Eskrima practice in their native dances. So this was the only time the practitioners were able to have freedom to move as they pleased. Though their practice was disguised through dance, they found out something interesting. The practitioners realized while they were dancing, they were enhancing also their skills in Eskrima. They became quicker and sharper both mentally and physically. So these are some of the dances they use as their conditioning training. The maglalatik dance, or known as the magbabao dance, is an indigenous dance in which coconut shell halves are worn in the body as vests and also secured in the hands. The dancers, which are all men, perform the dance by hitting one coconut shell to the other. It could be your own coconut shell or the other person's coconut shell. All male, hitting each other's coconut shells. Sign me up. The main goal of this dance is to impress the viewers with the great skills of dancing and also some other tricks, but at the same time maintaining the rhythm to the fast drum beats. So the Eskrima practitioners noted that this dance consists of trapping and boxing method hidden in the dance. No wonder, because this dance is fast-paced rhythmic dance that focuses on hitting your own body and also as a means of defense and offense. Like, can't hit me, bitch. Another is one of the oldest form of dance in the Philippines is the singkil, where the dancers have to avoid the clasping of the bamboo poles. Same also as the tinikling dance, which also includes clasping of bamboos. You know, Filipinos just love bamboo. Both dances show a striking similarity in the footwork, timing, and rhythms of that of Kali. And there are plenty more dances to mention, where the practitioners use these dances as their exercise. But the favorite dance that the practitioners love to perform is the Moro dance. So Moro is a play where actors dramatize through the recent capture of a Christian army of an Islamic stronghold. Now this stage play was so popular that other plays were written and villages around the Philippines would present this. The practitioners love this because it was the only time they can hold a sword and pretend to have a sword fight. But actually they were training and the Spaniards didn't have a clue. They were just simply entertained by the play. In due time, the practitioners were able to systemize these moves and slowly build this as their actual practice. While the colonized areas of the Philippines were doing this, the southern part, which was not colonized, had developed their practice with an actual bladed weapon. The Moros of Mindanao, which the Moro was based on, had systemized their combat skills with their sharp blades before the Spanish could have reached in their area. In order to preserve their system, they wanted this to be used on a daily basis without really encountering like real combats. Unless you're a war freak, okay? You can't help looking for trouble. So, the native dance rhythmic supplied the form and native dance movements were applied in practice. In the Sulu archipelago, the people still practice this kind of form with rhythmic beats. And they do have a number of fighting styles, which also includes the silat, which I mentioned earlier. And this is a dance where you use a beautiful wavy sword called kris. Again, not the actress, the sword. And this sword and practice can be found also in various parts of Southeast Asia. Honestly, it would be really cool if you incorporate this with your own daily routine. Now, you're just like dancing in the street and someone tries to nab you like, up! You can't mess with me, bitch. And during those harsh times under the Spaniards, revolts still occurred. Though native Filipinos have learned to use guns, they would still carry bladed weapons as their backup. And because of this, the Philippines is known as a blade culture. Unlike with the Western culture, the combative and self-defense blade arts have gone extinct and was left behind in the medieval and Renaissance times. It kind of devolved into a sport fencing when the firearms began. And yes, blade fighting is a living art in the Philippines, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Because you know, Filipinos are violent-driven people, according to the Spaniards. Local folks in the Philippines are more likely to bring knives than guns, which I totally agree because I saw this firsthand when I was living in the Philippines. Shout out to my uncles. Yeah, they hate each other there. Yeah. And you can really see this quite often in the provinces. Well, for them, it's quite handy because when you're living in the farm or in the forest, you need to chop off something. So don't get alarmed if you see someone in the Philippines bringing a huge-ass knife unless you're getting chased by that person. Okay, you have the right to be alarmed. And there are plenty kinds of knives that originated in the Philippines, especially the well-known balisong, which has been featured a lot in the movies and especially in armies around the world. Wow, international. But in the Philippines, it's usually used by the vendors to cut green mangoes. So the practice of Arnis and also the weapons spread throughout the world. In the beginning, there was no belting or grading system like ever because it was usually taught informally and just passed on from one generation to the other. But the practical movement system was created by that time. And before, all of the written documents were burned by the Spaniards, and also the Japanese. Yeah, we were also colonized by the Japanese. Saw the Arnis masters as threats. When the Japanese arrived in the Philippines, they were amazed by the sophisticated system of the practitioners. So they invited all the masters in the Philippines for a cultural exchange in Japan. A number of these masters just packed up and, decided to sail with the Japanese. And sadly, they never made it. Crazy. And ironically, the belt ranking was adopted from the popularity of karate and judo in the Philippines. Especially karate. It's like a favorite summer lessons in the Philippines until now. The popularity of Eskrima was gained as early as the 1920s during the colonization of the US. So if you're new to the culture of the Philippines, we have a lot of colonizers, okay? Just a heads up. So the Americans sent Filipinos to work in the other US territories such as Hawaii and California to work as farmers. But little did they know that they didn't just send farmers. They sent martial artists. Many of the Filipinos settled in Stockton and formed a Filipino community. There, they started to share their practices to one another. At first, the teaching was kept strictly within the Filipino community until the late 1960s when the masters such as Angel Cabales began teaching others. Long story short, it became very popular in America. It gained popularity in the self-defense trainings. Arnis was really useful when defending against the knives in street encounters. As a result, many systems of Arnis have been modified in varying degrees to make them more marketable to a worldwide audience. What caught the attention of Arnis from everyone was the elements of locking, controls, and disarms. It was really focused on self-defense. But the irony of this is that the philosophy of Arnis is quite the opposite of what you begin with. So the philosophy of Arnis is that the best defense is a good offense. So you get to learn to attack first, then defense comes later unlike other martial arts practices, and you get to learn using weapons first and hand-to-hand combats would come naturally after. I'm not gonna talk about the detailed concepts of the practice because I'm not an expert, okay? So it's better if you learn from legit experts. But one thing I need to mention is that how Arnis teaches you to be resourceful. You won't be using just knives and sticks, okay? But you can use anything in your surroundings as weapons. And that is why FMA is widely used in action movies like, tons. For example, Bourne movies, 300, Mortal Kombat, Kick-Ass, and the list goes on.
Okay, pop quiz. What's the proper name for one of those?
Easy, Balathong. It's Filipino.
And of course, Bruce Lee movies. Some of his movies featured Eskrima. And you know why? Well, his teacher / training partner during his time in America was Dan Inosanto, who is a Filipino.
That we will have to find out.
And this gained a lot of attention and recognition. Now, back in the Philippines, it was finally recognized by the National College of Physical Education. In 1969, it stated that it should be taught in schools in the physical educational classes. In 2009, huge leap 2009. Arnis was finally established as the national martial art and sport in the Philippines after President Ma'am Gloria signed the Republic Act number 9850. And there had been competitions and duels that also started way before it was recognized as a sport. And now it's a well-known sport in the SEA Games. And of course, internationally. And there are plenty of names to be mentioned in the world of Arnis. Like Porfirio Lanada, he is the founder of Arnis Lanada. Like, he specialized the style of stick fighting. And Remy Amador Presas, who modified many techniques of the old Arnis. And there's so many names to be mentioned. Just search up in Google, okay? And yes, that was quite a story, yeah? I'm just really happy that our ancestors were able to keep this martial arts alive. It kind of makes you feel proud, like they really tried their best to keep it alive. And the things they had to do to keep it alive and pass it on from one generation to the other. And it's pretty interesting how they developed this. And I kind of regretted not learning this when I was still back in the Philippines. Like, I had so many friends who invited me to try out Arnis. And you just start to regret it when the opportunity is gone. So before we And by any chance, if you're in Cebu, I would like to promote a local brand that specializes in making customized knives, hand engraving, and inlaying since 1983. Yes, 1983. I wasn't born yet around that time, it means I'm still young. You can just visit knifemakercebu.com or follow Knifemaker Cebu in Instagram. There you can request customized knives with different things you want to add. You can add flowers and butterflies, things that are pretty. Or you can purchase ready-made knives so you're equipped and ready for the next colonial invasion. Or use it to scare off your pesky neighbors. But I'm not here to promote violence, okay? Just here to support local brands, okay? Slash. So that's it for today. I hope you had fun and also learned a lot. And just to remind you, okay, even though Filipinos are, violent driven, we're still friendly, okay? We're not that violent. Don't look at the news. So stay safe, stay freaky, and goodbye.